My mother can't even recognize her own signature anymore, my daughter told the judge. The clerk enlarged the power of attorney on the screen. Her husband stopped smiling before she did. The first sign that my daughter had begun planning a life without my consent arrived in a white gift box on my 74th birthday. Natalie set it beside the lemon cake while her husband, Adrian, stood behind her in the pale blue shirt he wore whenever he wanted to look trustworthy. My granddaughter, Tess, my sister, Ruth, and my old neighbor, Jonah, were already seated at the oak table Paul had built before Natalie was born. "Open it now," Natalie said. Inside was an electronic medication dispenser. It had a locked compartment, a glowing blue ring, and an app that alerted someone else if I missed a dose. "I take 1 blood pressure tablet every morning," I said. "And vitamin D," Natalie replied. "This is just peace of mind." Adrian turned the machine toward me. Natalie can monitor it from her phone. I looked at my daughter. "You want to monitor my medicine?" "Only if something goes wrong." "Nothing has gone wrong." Tess touched the box. "Grandma doesn't need this." Natalie's smile tightened. "It's about being proactive." Adrian loved that word. Proactive, strategic, transitional. He had spent 15 years in commercial real estate and spoke about family the way other men spoke about properties that needed repositioning. I closed the box. "Thank you. I'll put it away." "It needs to be connected," Natalie said. "Not today." Adrian had already taken out his phone. "It takes 3 minutes." "No." He put the phone away. Nobody mentioned the dispenser again while we ate, though Natalie watched me cut my cake as if the angle of the knife might reveal something. After they left, I placed the box in the mudroom beside Paul's work boots. He had been dead 4 years, and I still had not moved them. That fact would later appear in a court petition as evidence that I was trapped in the past. To me, it meant the boots still belonged there. I lived in a stone house outside Asheville, on 38 acres that turned copper and red every autumn. Paul and I bought it in 1978, repaired it room by room, raised Natalie there, and planted the white oaks lining the drive. I had also spent 32 years as a public school principal. I knew the difference between confusion and a person who was simply tired of being questioned. The dispenser did not frighten me. It irritated me. My daughter would later use one feeling to prove the other. 2 weeks after my birthday, Natalie called to say a pipe had burst above her condominium and repairs might take 6 weeks. "You can use the guest cottage," I said. The cottage stood beyond the apple barn. Paul had built it for my mother, and after she died, I used it for visitors. I expected suitcases. Natalie and Adrian arrived with a moving truck. It carried a sofa, desks, lamps, golf clubs, bedroom furniture, and 12 plastic tubs. "I thought this was 6 weeks," I said. "We didn't want to live out of boxes," Natalie replied. "You brought all of them." That evening, Tess came into my kitchen while her parents argued over where to place a second desk. "You know their condo is for sale," she said. I stopped rinsing apples. "Your mother said the damage was serious." "It wasn't. Dad says buyers prefer empty units." "Then why are they here?" "He says it's temporary." "That is not an answer." "No," Tess said. "It isn't." The next morning, I found Natalie opening my mail at the kitchen counter. "I brought it in because of the rain," she said. "The mailbox has a door." I showed her the condominium listing. Before she could answer, Adrian entered with 2 coffees and said they needed flexibility for the next chapter. The next chapter was Everwell Ridge, a luxury community for older adults that he wanted to build across my land. His tablet showed walking paths through Paul's meadow, cottages along the orchard, and a glass dining hall where the apple barn stood. "You made plans for property you do not own. Concepts Adrian said. Nothing binding. Natalie moved beside him. The land is too much for you now. I employ a groundskeeper. You should not have to manage people. I managed 800 students and 67 employees. That was years ago. 7. Adrian said Everwell would pay enough for a beautiful apartment near them. The property is not for sale, I said. Natalie sighed. You did not even consider it. I considered it before he finished speaking. Adrian picked up his coffee. That kind of rigidity is exactly what concerns us. The subject was no longer the sale. They were beginning to build a reason why my refusal should not count. For the next month, their concern spread through my house. Natalie collected my mail to save me the walk. Adrian moved my spare car key because leaving it on the hook was supposedly unsafe. A smart speaker appeared in the kitchen, then cameras at the front door and garage. They asked where I was going and when I would return. If I changed plans, Natalie called twice. Concern is difficult to argue with because the person offering it has already declared themselves kind. At Thanksgiving, Adrian carved the turkey at my table before Tess could pick up the knife Paul had once used. During dessert, his mother touched my wrist. Natalie says you've had some memory trouble. The room went quiet. What trouble? I asked. Natalie flushed. I said you've been under stress. You told her I was forgetting things. I said you repeated a question. What question? She could not name one. Adrian leaned back. This is what we mean. You become combative. Grandma asked a normal question, Tess said. Stay out of this, he told her. No. I stood. Dessert is over. After the guests left, Natalie followed me into the pantry. You humiliated me in front of his family. You told them I was confused. I told them I was worried. You left the stove on last week. No, I did not. There was a burner burning with nothing on it. I was making stock. There was no pot. I remembered the blue enamel pot, the bones and onion skins, and returning from the bathroom to find it washed in the sink. That night I found it in the cabinet, clean but still smelling faintly of bay leaves. I sat on the kitchen floor and understood that my daughter had lied about something small enough to make me doubt myself and dangerous enough to frighten me. I photographed the pot and opened a black composition book, the same kind I once kept for students who arrived without supplies. For 3 weeks, I wrote down dates and facts. Mail opened, car key moved, a wellness appointment scheduled without permission. Ruth told I was afraid to drive after I had driven her home. The medication dispenser connected in the cottage and registered to Natalie. I did not call the notebook evidence. I called it a way to learn whether I was losing track of events or the only person keeping track of them. On December 12th, a woman named Dawn Keller arrived in navy scrubs carrying a tablet. Natalie called her a care coordinator. I am not receiving care, I said. She is only here for a baseline, Natalie replied. A baseline of what? Balance, nutrition, cognition. I refused until Adrian appeared behind them and said it had already been paid for. Then I agreed because I did not want a stranger to think I was unreasonable. That is how control often enters a house. Not with chains, with a woman trying not to look difficult. Dawn tested my balance, blood pressure, recall, and reasoning. I remembered all 5 words she gave me and completed the clock drawing. At the end, she said my result was normal for my age and education. Natalie asked, "But the test is limited." "All screenings are limited," Dawn said. Adrian nodded as if that was the only sentence he had heard. After she left, Natalie said, "We are trying to keep you safe." "From what?" Her eyes moved toward the meadow. "From making a decision you cannot undo." The land again. Always the land. 3 days later, I opened the back of my jammed printer and found 3 crumpled pages. A durable power of attorney named Natalie as my agent. The last page carried a copy of my signature. I recognized the angle and long upward stroke. It came from the birthday card I had given Paul when he turned 70, a card framed in his study. The frame was empty. When Adrian entered carrying groceries, I folded the pages inside my sweater. "Printer trouble?" he asked. "I fixed it." "Good for you." He used the tone adults save for children who tie their own shoes. I smiled back. That afternoon, I drove to the public library and called Marisol Vega, Paul's estate attorney, from the staff office. I told her about the land proposal, the false stove story, the assessment, and the copied signature. "Are you safe in the house tonight?" she asked. The question embarrassed me. "I think so." That is not the same as yes. The next morning, she studied my notebook and the pages from the printer. "They are creating a record," she said, "a story that you cannot manage your own affairs." My daughter would never call it that. She may not use the ugliest name for what she is doing. People rarely do. Theft becomes an advance. Control becomes support. A plan becomes concern. Marisol told me to obtain an independent medical evaluation and protect my accounts quietly. I do not want a war with my daughter. You did not print that form. The following week, a geriatric psychiatrist in Charlotte spent 4 hours testing my memory, reasoning, attention, and judgment. "My family says I am changing," I told him. "Do you think you are?" "I think I have become less willing to be managed." "That is not a diagnosis," he said. His report found no cognitive impairment and confirmed that I could manage my own medical, personal, and financial affairs. I cried in the parking garage because I had needed a stranger to put my own mind on paper. With Marisol's help, I changed passwords, moved records to a secure location, added alerts to my accounts, rented a post office box, and appointed a neutral backup for medical decisions. I did not disinherit Natalie. I simply removed the shortcuts she and Adrian appeared to be preparing. The first money disappeared on New Year's Eve. My bank called at 8:12 in the morning to verify a transfer request for $30,000 from my savings account to a company called Blue Ridge Advisory Holdings. I had never heard of it. The request had been submitted online using my security questions. The bank stopped the transfer. I asked for the access records. The login came from the guest cottage's internet connection. When I confronted Natalie, she went white. Adrian did not. "It was a deposit," he said. "For what?" "The Everwell option agreement." I rejected that offer. It was refundable. "You tried to take $30,000 from my account." "We were protecting the opportunity." "With my money," Natalie began to cry. "Mom, please listen." "No, you listen." My voice shook, but I did not lower it. "You have opened my mail, moved my keys, lied about my stove, arranged a cognitive test, printed a power of attorney, copied my signature, and attempted to take money from my account." Natalie stared at me. "What power of attorney?" Adrian turned toward her. It happened quickly, but I saw it. She had known there was a plan. She had not known he had already printed it. He recovered before she did. "You are confused," he said. I laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "There it is." He folded his arms. "You have been under enormous stress. We are trying to prevent you from making impulsive decisions. I have made one." I pointed toward the cottage. "You are both leaving today." Natalie looked at me as though I had struck her. "You can't mean that." "I do. Our condo is under contract." "You should have told me before you moved in." "Where are we supposed to go?" "You have the resources to decide." Adrian stepped closer. "This is exactly the kind of instability we have been worried about." Get out of my house. You are proving our point. No, I said. I am ending your access. He did not move. Neither did I. Then Tess appeared in the hallway. She had driven in from Raleigh the night before and heard everything from the stairs. Dad, she said, leave. He turned. This is not your business. You asked me to lie for you. Natalie looked at her. What? Tess came down the final steps. He asked me to write a statement saying Grandma got lost at the grocery store and forgot my birthday. The room went silent. I never got lost, I said. I know. Adrian's face changed. Not guilt, calculation. Tess misunderstood. No, she said. I recorded you. She held up her phone. I watched my daughter look at her husband as if a wall had disappeared between them. For 1 second, I thought she would choose the truth. Then Adrian said, She is trying to turn all of you against me. Natalie wiped her face. Everyone stop. He put his hand on her shoulder. She needs help. Natalie closed her eyes. When she opened them, she looked at me. Maybe you do. That was the moment I understood I could not save my daughter from a decision she was still willing to make. They packed for 3 hours. Adrian carried boxes to the moving truck with violent efficiency. Natalie moved more slowly, crying in every room but refusing to speak to me. Tess packed her own things and put them in my car. At dusk, the cottage was empty. I changed the locks the following morning. 2 days later, a sheriff's deputy served me with an emergency petition for guardianship. Natalie alleged that I was experiencing rapid cognitive decline, paranoia, financial recklessness, and aggression. The petition said I had become obsessed with imaginary theft. It said I had driven to an unknown location for an entire day and could not explain where I had been. It said I had withdrawn $30,000 from my account and hidden it. It said I had evicted my daughter during a mental health episode. It included statements from Elaine, Adrian's brother, and 2 neighbors I barely knew. It included Dawn's assessment, but not the page showing my score. At the bottom, Natalie asked to be appointed temporary guardian and conservator. I read the petition at my kitchen table. The words did something the earlier betrayals had not. They made me afraid, not of losing the land, of losing the legal right to decide where I slept. Marisol came within an hour. She read the petition, called the courthouse, and explained that the emergency request would be heard the next morning. They can do that quickly. They can ask quickly. That does not mean they will get what they want. What happens if the judge believes them? A temporary order could restrict access to some accounts or appoint a neutral evaluator until the full hearing. Could Natalie move me out of my house? Not tomorrow. The fact that she did not say never stayed with me all night. I packed a bag anyway. At the emergency hearing, Natalie sat across the aisle in a navy dress I had bought her for Paul's memorial service. Adrian sat beside her, one hand over hers. She did not look at me. Marisol presented the independent evaluation, the block transfer, and the copied power of attorney pages. The judge denied Natalie's request to become my temporary guardian, but he did not dismiss the case. He appointed a neutral court visitor and placed a temporary restriction on large property transfers until the full hearing, scheduled for 5 weeks later. It was not a defeat. It did not feel like a victory. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited because Adrian had already told a local business journal that a family health crisis was delaying the Everwell project. I had not known there was a project to delay. A young reporter called my name. Mrs. Price, is the property under contract? No. Is Everwell Ridge moving forward? No. Has your family asked the court to intervene because you rejected the development? Adrian turned sharply. Marisol touched my elbow. Do not answer anything else. But one answer was enough. By that evening, the renderings were online. The Everwell website showed my stone house restored as a private dining hall. The apple barn had become a yoga pavilion. The meadow was labeled Phase 2. At the bottom of the page, beneath a photograph of Adrian, were the words, "Site control anticipated." He had been selling certainty he did not possess. The next week became the strangest of my life. A court visitor came to my home and inspected my refrigerator, medicine cabinet, bank records, and driving log. She asked me to explain my monthly bills and describe what I would do in a fire. She interviewed Jonah, Ruth, Tess, Dawn, and my doctor. I answered every question. Then I went upstairs and vomited from humiliation. People who have never faced a capacity challenge imagine the truth will feel obvious. It does not. Once the question is asked officially, every ordinary mistake becomes a possible symptom. I put coffee in the cupboard instead of the refrigerator and stared at the jar for 10 minutes. I forgot why I entered the laundry room and wrote it in the notebook. I called Ruth twice in one morning and spent the rest of the day wondering whether I had proved Natalie right. Jonah found me standing at the mailbox in the rain. "You forgot an umbrella," he said. "I forget things. So do I." "What if I am changing?" "You are." I looked at him. He shrugged. "You are 74. I am 76. We are all changing. That does not mean your daughter gets the deed." I laughed in spite of myself. Then he handed me a grocery bag. Inside were 6 black composition books. "You're going to need more paper." The court visitor submitted her preliminary report after 10 days. She found no immediate safety risk and no obvious cognitive impairment. She recommended the guardianship petition be dismissed unless Natalie produced stronger evidence. Adrian produced stronger evidence, or what looked like it. He submitted a video from my front door camera showing me leaving the house at 6:18 one morning and returning after dark. The caption said I had been missing for 13 hours. He submitted a photograph of my car parked outside a medical building in Charlotte. He submitted a statement from a private investigator claiming I had moved financial records and met secretly with an attorney. He submitted the bank's blocked transfer notice but described it as proof I had attempted to move money to an unfamiliar company. They took the facts of my defense and rearranged them into symptoms. Marisol read the new filing in silence. "This is deliberate," she said. "I know." "Do you?" I looked at her. She tapped Adrian's affidavit. "This is not a family misunderstanding anymore." The full hearing was still 3 weeks away when Adrian held a private investor reception at a mountain lodge 10 miles from my house. He called it an informational preview. The invitation showed my meadow at sunset. Tess found it through a classmate whose father worked for a regional bank. "He's raising money," she said. We were sitting in my kitchen. She had moved into the upstairs guest room after her parents left and was attending classes remotely. For a project he cannot build. He says the guardianship will resolve the ownership issue. I felt something in me settle. Not calm. Decision. I called Marisol. "What happens if I attend?" "Nothing illegal." "Will it hurt the case?" "Only if you throw a chair." I was a principal for 32 years. I have never thrown a chair. "Then wear comfortable shoes." The reception took place on a Thursday evening beneath chandeliers made from antlers. About 60 people stood with wine glasses in front of large display boards showing cottages, gardens, and a spa complex spread across my land. Adrian stood near the fireplace speaking to 3 investors. Natalie was beside him. She saw me first. Her face lost all color. The room quieted in sections as people recognized me from the article. Adrian walked toward me with a smile that belonged to a stage. "Eleanor, this is not the right setting. You used my house on the invitation. This is a private event. So is my property." Marisol stood 2 steps behind me. Tess stood beside her. I walked to the largest rendering. A red line marked the boundary of the development. It included 4 acres that did not belong to me. They belonged to Jonah. I looked at Adrian. "You have not even verified the parcel lines." His smile tightened. Preliminary concept. A man near the front lowered his wine glass. I was told the site was secured. "It is in process," Adrian said. "No," I said. "It is in court because he asked my daughter to have me declared incompetent after I refused to sell." The silence became complete. Natalie whispered, "Mom, stop." I turned toward her. "Did you know he was taking deposits?" Her eyes moved to Adrian. That answered the question. One of the investors stepped forward. "What deposits?" Adrian raised both hands. "This is a distressed family member attempting to interfere with a confidential business presentation." Marisol spoke for the first time. "My client is the sole owner of the property depicted. No sale agreement, option agreement, or development authorization has been executed." A woman at the back began taking photographs of the display boards. Adrian's composure cracked. "Turn that phone off." The woman did not. I looked at the room. "My mind is not for sale. Neither is my land." Then I left. Outside, the air was cold enough to hurt my teeth. Tess hugged me in the parking lot. Marisol did not. She said, "You did well." Coming from her, it felt larger. The reception destroyed Adrian's financing within 48 hours. It also made him more dangerous. Not physically, publicly. He gave interviews describing me as brilliant but declining, a proud woman unable to accept aging. He said the guardianship petition was an act of love. Natalie sat beside him for one local television segment and held his hand. I watched 30 seconds before turning it off. The next morning, Dawn called me. Her voice shook. "I need to tell you something." We met at a diner outside Hendersonville. She brought printed emails. The first was from Natalie, sent before my assessment. "Please document any defensiveness, repeated questions, resistance to care, or fixation on property. We are concerned she can present well briefly." The second was from Adrian. "Do not write normal without qualifying that the screening is limited." The third offered Dawn an additional consulting payment if she would provide a declaration supporting guardianship. "I did not take it," Dawn said. "Why did you wait?" "I was afraid they would report me to my employer." "Why are you here now?" She looked down at her coffee. "My mother lost control of her finances to my brother. Everyone called it help until there was nothing left." I gave the emails to Marisol. Discovery began moving faster after that. Bank records showed that Blue Ridge Advisory Holdings belonged to Adrian. Investor deposits had been paid into the same company. More troubling, Adrian had used Natalie's electronic signature to guarantee a bridge loan against the condominium before it sold. The loan documents made Natalie personally responsible. I read them twice. "Does she know?" Marisol looked at me. "I cannot answer that." "Can we tell her?" "She is represented by counsel. She is my daughter. She is also the petitioner trying to remove your rights." Both things were true. That was the hardest part of the entire story. Not deciding whether Natalie had betrayed me. She had. The hard part was accepting that I could love her and still refuse to rescue her from consequences she had helped create. Tess asked to speak with her mother alone. I said no at first. Then I realized I was beginning to make decisions for her using the same language Natalie had used for me. It's your choice, I said, but meet in public. They met at a coffee shop. Natalie arrived with Adrian. Tess left without sitting down. He wouldn't let her talk to me alone, she said. The full hearing began on a Monday in February. It rained all morning. The courtroom smelled like wet wool and old paper. Natalie sat at the petitioner's table with Adrian and 2 attorneys. I sat with Marisol. Ruth and Jonah were behind me. Tess sat on the aisle. The judge heard 2 days of testimony. My doctor explained the independent evaluation. The court visitor described my home, finances, and daily functioning. Dawn testified about the assessment and the emails. Jonah testified that I had not been lost on the day Adrian called me missing. He had driven me to the train station because I did not want my car tracked. Ruth testified that I had repeated myself since 1963 and was no worse now. Even the judge smiled at that. Adrian testified for 3 hours. He was excellent. That is important to say. He did not sound cruel or greedy. He sounded patient, wounded, responsible. He described a family watching a proud woman decline. He spoke about my grief after Paul's death, my attachment to old objects, my refusal to embrace change. Each fact contained enough truth to carry the lie around it. Then Natalie took the stand. She looked smaller than she had at the investor reception. Her attorney asked when she first became concerned about my capacity. Last summer, she said. What did you observe? Forgetfulness, suspicion, anger. Did your mother understand the documents she was signing? Not always. Marisol stood for cross-examination. She began gently. Mrs. Cole, your mother served as a school principal for more than 3 decades? Yes. She manages her own household? Yes, but she pays her bills? Yes. She drives? Yes. She completed an independent medical evaluation? I was not present. That was not my question. Natalie looked toward Adrian. Yes. Marisol placed the copied power of attorney on the screen. Have you seen this document? Natalie swallowed. Yes. When? After it was printed. Who prepared it? Adrian found a template. Did your mother ask for it? No. Did she authorize you to be named as her agent? No. Did she sign it? No. Marisol enlarged the signature page. Where did this signature come from? Natalie hesitated. I don't know. That was when she said it. My mother doesn't always recognize her own signature anymore. The words moved through me like cold water. Marisol turned toward the clerk. A second image appeared beside the first. Paul's framed birthday card. The signature matched exactly. Same angle, same ink break, same tiny mark where the pen had caught on textured paper. A forensic document examiner had concluded the signature on the power of attorney was a digital copy. Marisol faced Natalie. Your mother recognized it immediately. Natalie looked at Adrian. He stopped smiling. Marisol continued. Did you remove this card from your father's study? No. Did your husband? I don't know. Did you know he used your electronic signature to guarantee a loan against your condominium? Natalie's attorney objected. The judge allowed the question because the loan related to Adrian's financial interest in the property. Natalie stared at Marisol. What loan? Adrian leaned toward his lawyer. Marisol placed the guarantee on the screen. Natalie read the first page, then the second. The color left her face slowly. That isn't my signature. It is an electronic signature issued through your email account. I didn't sign that. Adrian whispered her name. She turned toward him. You told me the condo had no debt. Her attorney touched her arm. The judge instructed her to answer only the questions asked. But the hearing had changed. Everyone felt it. Marisol showed the bank records from Blue Ridge Advisory Holdings, investor deposits, the attempted transfer from my savings, payments to the private investigator, the additional fee offered to Dawn. Then she showed an email Adrian had sent to his business partner 3 weeks before my birthday. Once Eleanor is under protection, Natalie can sign the option. She will not fight me in public. Natalie read the sentence twice. I watched my daughter understand that the plan had never placed her in control. She had been another signature he expected to use. The judge called a recess. Natalie stood so quickly her chair tipped backward. She did not look at me. She walked out through the side door with her attorney. Adrian remained at the table. For the first time since I had known him, he looked ordinary, not charming, not strategic, just a middle-aged man surrounded by documents. The hearing resumed 40 minutes later. Natalie's attorney announced that she wished to withdraw the guardianship petition. Adrian's attorney objected, claiming he had standing as an interested family member. He did not. The judge dismissed the petition, dissolved the temporary restrictions, and referred the financial records to the appropriate authorities for review. He did not deliver a speech. Real judges rarely do. He simply looked at Natalie and said, "Concern does not excuse fabrication." Then he looked at me. "Mrs. Price, you retain full authority over your person, property, and affairs." I had known that when I entered the room. Hearing it aloud still nearly broke me. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded the steps. Marisol guided me through them. Someone shouted, "Will you sue your daughter?" I stopped. Natalie stood beneath the awning 20 feet away. She was alone. Adrian had left through another exit. I looked at the reporter. "No," I said. "Today, I am going home." The stone house was exactly where I had left it. That surprised me. After 5 months of being told I could lose it, I expected the building to look transformed. Instead, rainwater ran through the same crack in the courtyard wall. Paul's boots remained on the mudroom shelf. The kitchen smelled faintly of coffee. I walked from room to room and touched nothing. Tess made soup. Jonah brought bread. Ruth opened a bottle of wine at 4 in the afternoon and said the court had earned it. We ate at the oak table. 1 chair remained empty. I did not ask anyone to fill it. Adrian was investigated for fraud connected to the investor deposits and loan documents. The process took months. I will not pretend I understood every filing. I understood enough. Natalie filed for divorce 6 days after the hearing. She did not call me first. She moved into a furnished apartment near her office and took only what belonged to her. Tess helped her pack. I did not. For the first month, Natalie sent letters. Not emails, letters. The first apologized for believing Adrian. I returned it. The second apologized for lying about the stove, the mail, and my driving. I kept it but did not answer. The third did not ask for forgiveness. It listed what she had done in plain language. I told relatives you were confused. I helped create a record against you. I agreed to seek control of your money and property. I chose my marriage over the truth when Tess confronted us. I was wrong before Adrian deceived me, not only after. That was the first letter I believed. We met in April at a park beside the French Broad River. The trees had begun to leaf out. Children rode bicycles along the path. Natalie looked older than she had in court. "I don't expect you to trust me," she said. "Good." She nodded. I kept telling myself the land would solve everything. What was everything? Our debt, his business, the condo, Tess's tuition, your maintenance. My fear that you would leave everything to the university or some foundation. I had never said that. No. But Dad did. I frowned. Your father said he wanted part of the meadow preserved. I heard that as less for me. There it was. Not Adrian. Not concern. Resentment. "I thought you loved the house," I said. "I did. I also hated it." "Why?" "Because you were always better at running it than being my mother." The sentence hurt because it was not entirely false. When Natalie was young, I brought school problems home. I knew which teacher had missed a deadline, which student was failing, which parent had threatened a lawsuit. I did not always know my daughter had stopped eating lunch with her friends or that she cried before piano lessons. Paul softened the edges I left sharp. After he died, Natalie and I never spoke about the years when I had been respected by everyone, except the child waiting for me to notice her. "I failed you in ways that were real," I said. She began to cry. "But those failures did not make me incompetent. They did not give you the right to take my future." "I know. Do you?" "Yes." I looked at her for a long time. "What would you have done if the judge gave you control?" She wiped her face. "I would have signed the option." The honesty was terrible. I appreciated it. "And moved me?" She looked down. Adrian had chosen an apartment. Where? Greenville. 2 hours from my home. "Would you have visited?" "Yes." The answer came too quickly. I stood. "That is enough for today." She did not ask me to stay. That mattered too. Over the summer, I made decisions I had postponed while defending my right to make them. I hired a land manager. I repaired the apple barn. I granted a conservation easement over 12 acres of woodland. Not because Paul had wanted it, not because Natalie feared it, but because I did. I created a paid internship for landscape architecture students, and Tess became the first person to tell me she should not receive special treatment. "You are getting special treatment," I said. "You have to sleep in the upstairs room with the broken radiator." She accepted. The Everwell renderings disappeared from the internet. The medication dispenser remained in its box until I donated it to a community clinic that actually needed one. I removed the cameras Adrian had installed and kept only the front door bell, registered to my phone. For the first time in months, I stopped writing down every small mistake. I forgot a dentist appointment in August. Nothing happened. I left my reading glasses in the refrigerator beside the mustard. Tess laughed so hard she had to sit down. I laughed too. That was how I knew some part of me had returned. Natalie began therapy. I know because she told me once, and then stopped offering it as proof of improvement. She repaid the $30,000 attempted transfer, even though the bank had blocked it, placing the money in an escrow account until the financial case was resolved. She corrected relatives who repeated the story that I had overreacted. She gave Dawn a written apology. She did not ask for a key. In October, 9 months after the petition, she called and asked whether she could visit for 1 hour. Not stay, not bring boxes. Visit. I said yes. She arrived alone with a store-bought pie. We sat on the porch because the weather was warm. For the first 20 minutes, we discussed Tess, road construction, and whether Ruth's hearing aids were actually working or merely decorative. Then Natalie looked toward the meadow. I saw the students working near the barn. They're mapping drainage. Dad would have liked that. Yes, she folded her hands. I used to think the property was the reason you never needed me. I waited. I thought if you left it, you might become someone I could take care of. By force? I know how that sounds. It sounds like what happened. She nodded. I wanted you to need me, but only in a way I could control. That was the closest we came to understanding each other that year. Not forgiveness, understanding. There is a difference. At Thanksgiving, I invited Ruth, Jonah, Tess, and 2 of the university interns. I invited Natalie for dinner, not the weekend. She arrived at 4 carrying sweet potatoes and stood at the back door until I opened it. "You can come in," I said. "I know." But she had waited. During dinner, nobody discussed the court case. Ruth complained about the turkey. Jonah spilled wine. Tess announced she had been offered a summer position in Chicago. Natalie listened without telling her what to do. After dessert, she began washing dishes. I joined her. For several minutes, we worked in silence. Then she held up the blue enamel stockpot. "This one?" "Yes. I moved it that day." "I know. I wanted you to question yourself." "I know." She gripped the handles. "I am sorry." This time, I believed her. Believing an apology does not obligate you to restore the old arrangement. I did not give her a key. I did not place her back on my accounts. I did not promise the land. What I gave her was a towel and a place beside me at the sink. It was enough for that evening. A year after the hearing, the financial case against Adrian ended in a plea agreement involving the investor funds and falsified loan records. Natalie was not charged, though she spent many hours answering questions and more money than she could afford on lawyers. She sold most of the furniture from the condominium. The leather sofa she and Adrian had moved into my cottage went to a young couple with twins. Tess completed her degree and accepted a job with a firm that restored public parks. She still returned twice a month to help with the Meadow project, though I suspected she mostly came for Jonah's biscuits. As for me, I turned 75. There was no electronic dispenser on the table. There was lemon cake. Ruth gave me a red umbrella because I had forgotten mine the day Jonah found me at the mailbox. Tess gave me a framed map of the conservation land. Jonah gave me another black composition book with a note inside, for things worth remembering. Natalie gave me nothing wrapped. After everyone left, she asked whether I would walk with her to the apple barn. The evening was cold. The white oaks along the drive had lost most of their leaves. We stood beneath the barn light while wind moved through the empty branches. "I used to think you kept this place because you loved Dad more than me," she said. "I kept it because I loved my life here." "I understand that now. I hope so." She looked at the house. "Do you think we'll ever be normal again?" "No." Her face tightened. Then I continued. "I think normal was part of the problem." She waited. "We can be honest. We can be careful. We can be better than we were. But we are not going backward." She nodded slowly. "I can live with that." "Good." We walked back toward the house. At the kitchen door, she stopped. "May I come in for tea?" It was a small question. Once, she had entered without knocking, opened my mail, moved my keys, and tried to decide where I would spend the rest of my life. Now she asked. "Yes," I said. "You may." I watched her wipe her shoes before stepping across the threshold. People imagine freedom arrives with a slammed door. Sometimes it does. Mine arrived in smaller sounds. A lock changing, a judge reading a sentence, a daughter waiting outside, a question asked instead of a decision made. For most of my life, I believed being a good mother meant leaving the door open no matter what happened. I know better now. Love is not an unlocked house. Love is knowing the door belongs to someone, and knocking anyway. If this story found you at a moment when someone else has begun calling control concern, remember that your age does not erase your judgment, your history, or your right to decide what happens next. Tell me in the comments where you are listening from and whether you believe Eleanor was right to let Natalie back into her life slowly.